Take off that ghetto jewelry right now or I'm having you arrested. The flight attendant hissed, her manicured fingers digging like a vice into the 72-year-old woman's wrist. Dorothy Mae Washington sat calmly in her Sunday best, the gold necklace her mother wore during the 1961 Freedom Rides pressing against her chest. The flight attendant sneered, certain she was putting a helpless, insubordinate elderly passenger in her place. What she didn't realize was that Dorothy wasn't just a quiet grandmother. She was a retired senior civil rights attorney who had argued twice before the Supreme Court. This single arrogant mistake was about to ignite a federal investigation, dismantle a massive corporate cover-up, and permanently end the attendant's career. You're going to need to remove that jewelry. Dorothy looked up from her book. The flight attendant stood over her seat, arms crossed, face pinched tight with disapproval. I'm sorry, the jewelry. Cynthia gestured at Dorothy's neck. It's excessive airline policy. Dorothy glanced around the cabin. A white woman 3 rows up wore hoops bigger than Dorothy's fist. The man across the aisle sported a watch that probably costs more than Dorothy's monthly pension. What policy? Cynthia's jaw clenched. Ma'am, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not arguing. I'm asking a question. Take off the jewelry. Dorothy sat down her book, a legal thriller she'd been meaning to read since retirement, and looked directly at Cynthia. 40 years as a civil rights attorney had taught her to recognize a bully immediately. Show me the written policy. Excuse me. If it's policy, it's documented. Show me. Cynthia's face flushed. Are you refusing to follow crew instructions? I'm requesting clarification. That's my right. A man across the aisle pulled out his phone. Dorothy caught the movement. Smart man documenting everything. Cynthia saw it too. Sir, put that away. We're still boarding, the man said. Marcus. His name was Marcus. Dorothy would learn later. Phone use is allowed during boarding. Cynthia whipped back to Dorothy. Listen, at your age, you should know better than to cause trouble. This isn't the 1960s anymore. There it was. Dorothy felt something cold and familiar settle in her chest. She'd been 14 in 1960. She remembered exactly what the 1960s were. You're right, Dorothy said quietly. This isn't the 1960s, which means you can't arbitrarily target passengers based on race. How dare you then show me the policy? I don't have to show you anything. An elderly white woman 2 rows up turned around. I'm wearing jewelry. Nobody asked me to remove mine. Ma'am, stay out of this. But if it's policy, this is not your concern. Dorothy touched the necklace at her throat. Gold chain, simple locket. Her mother had pressed it into her hand 15 years ago. Voice weak from cancer, but eyes fierce. Wear it proud, baby girl. Don't you ever take it off for nobody. Dorothy had promised. She'd kept that promise every day since. Ma'am. Cynthia's voice dropped dangerously low. Last chance. Remove the jewelry or I'm calling security for asking questions. For being disruptive, I'm sitting quietly in my seat. You're refusing crew instructions. I'm asking you to justify those instructions. Dorothy paused. And I think we both know what's really happening here. Cynthia's eyes went hard. What are you implying, that you singled me out, that you referenced the 1960s like I should be more compliant, that you think I should just obey without question? The cabin had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Cynthia hissed. Dorothy smiled, small, sad, without humor. Actually, I think I do. I've been dealing with women like you my entire life. That's when Cynthia grabbed her wrist. The grip was hard. Fingers digging in meant to hurt. Dorothy's body moved before her mind processed it. Muscle memory from 1962. Aikido lessons from a sensei who taught black students free because he understood what it meant to be targeted. She twisted her wrist, a quick practiced motion, and Cynthia's grip broke effortlessly. Don't put your hands on me. Cynthia reached again. Dorothy stood up. At 5'6", she wasn't particularly tall, but something about the way she rose made Cynthia stumble backward. Maybe it was the look in Dorothy's eyes. Maybe it was 40 years of courtroom authority. Maybe it was the steel spine built from marching with people who'd faced worse than petty tyrants in polyester uniforms. I said Dorothy repeated, "Don't touch me. You assaulted me." Cynthia's voice cracked. Everyone saw it. Everyone saw you grab her first. Marcus called out, holding up his phone. "Got the whole thing." "Me too." A woman across the aisle waved her phone. "And me, a college kid 3 rows back." Cynthia looked wildly around at the phones, the witnesses, the power slipping away in real time. "I want her arrested. She assaulted a flight attendant." Dorothy sat back down, smoothed her pantsuit, and opened her purse. She pulled out a business card case, leather monogrammed retirement gift, and selected a card. Dorothy Mae Washington, retired senior partner Williams, and associates, 40 years specializing in civil rights law, argued twice before the Supreme Court. She held out the card. "Everything you've said and done in the last 5 minutes constitutes harassment based on race. You've also filed a false assault claim when multiple witnesses show you initiated contact. That's illegal." She paused. "So I'm giving you one chance to walk away and apologize, or we involve police, your supervisors, and the media that's probably already being called." Dead silence in the cabin. Cynthia stared at the card like it might explode. Dorothy waited, and Cynthia, instead of apologizing, instead of backing down, instead of doing the smart thing, doubled down. "I don't care who you think you are. I'm the authority on this aircraft. You're being removed." Dorothy sighed, long tired, carrying the weight of every battle she'd ever fought. "Then you're making a very expensive mistake." She pulled out her phone and dialed. One ring. "James, I'm on flight 447 out of O'Hare. I need you to conference in the ACLU legal team and probably media contacts. Flight attendant demanded I remove Mama's jewelry, claimed it's policy. It's not. Grabbed me when I questioned her. Now claims I assaulted her. Multiple witnesses. Video evidence. Pause. Yes. Mama's necklace. The Freedom Rides necklace. Another pause. No, I'm not taking it off. You know I promised her." James' voice came through loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Stay on that plane. I'm calling the CEO right now." Went to Harvard with him and alerting ACLU press office. This is about to get very public. Cynthia's eyes widened. "You're bluffing." Dorothy held up her phone screen. "James Washington, Esquire. Call timer ticking. James is my son's senior partner at Goldstein Rodriguez in Washington. Maybe you've heard of them. Biggest civil rights firm in the country. He's also calling his college roommate your CEO." Color drained from Cynthia's face. Helen, the elderly white woman who'd spoken up, leaned over. "Honey, I'd apologize right now if I were you, but Cynthia was too far gone. Pride wouldn't let her back down. I'm calling security. Please do. I'd love to explain this to authorities." Cynthia turned and ran toward the front of the plane. Marcus leaned across the aisle. "Ma'am, I'm Marcus Johnson, family lawyer. I recorded everything. Happy to provide testimony or footage." "Thank you, Marcus. That was incredible. The way you stayed calm. 40 years of practice." Helen came back to Dorothy's seat. "I'm Helen, and I'm sorry. Sorry you had to deal with that. Sorry people like her exist. Sorry I didn't speak up sooner." Dorothy saw genuine remorse in Helen's eyes. "Thank you for speaking up at all. A lot of people don't." Well, it was wrong. Plain wrong. Agreement murmured through the cabin. A young black man appeared beside Dorothy. "Miss Washington, I just Googled you. You're the Dorothy Washington who argued Morrison versus State Board of Education." Dorothy nodded. "That case changed my life." His voice shook. "I'm from Alabama. Our schools were still segregated in practice. Your case forced real integration. I got to go to a better school because of you. Got scholarships because of you. I'm graduating Northwestern Law because of you." Dorothy's eyes stung. "What's your name, David Turner?" "Well, David sounds like you're going to be a fine lawyer. I want to be like you. Then you will. You'll stand on my shoulders like I stood on those who came before me." Her phone buzzed. Text from James, CEO personally calling flight captain, handled at highest level. Sit tight. You're getting an apology. Dorothy showed the text to Marcus and Helen. "Good," Helen said fiercely. "She should be fired. She probably will be." Dorothy's voice was quiet. "Part of me feels sorry for her. Sorry. She's probably been like this her whole life, never faced consequences. Maybe this will be a wake-up call. Maybe it won't. But she's about to learn a hard lesson about picking the wrong person." Marcus laughed. "Oh, she picked the wrong one." Minutes ticked by. The cabin buzzed. Passengers shared video footage, texted friends, posted on social media. Dorothy watched the story spread in real time. A different flight attendant appeared. Younger Latino, deeply uncomfortable. Name tag Roberto, Miss Washington. "Captain Rodriguez would like to speak with you." Another removal attempt. "No, ma'am." Roberto's voice was urgent. "Promise. He wants to apologize." Dorothy stood. Marcus stood too. "I'm coming with you as witness." "Me too," Helen said. "And me," David added. A small protective circle formed around Dorothy as she walked forward. Other passengers reached out, touched her hand, offered support. At the front, the cockpit door opened. Captain Robert Rodriguez stepped out, 50s silver in his dark hair, genuinely distressed. "Miss Washington, I cannot apologize enough. Is she still on this plane?" "No, ma'am. Removed by security. Suspended pending investigation. But honestly, she's getting terminated. This isn't her first complaint." Dorothy nodded. "You understand what she did? Why it was wrong?" "Yes, targeted you. Based on race, made up false policy, attempted to humiliate you, physically assaulted you when you questioned her. It's indefensible. And the jewelry, am I required to remove it? Absolutely not. No such policy. Wear whatever you want. I'm sorry our employee made you feel otherwise. Do you know what this necklace is?" Captain Rodriguez shook his head. "My mother wore this during the Freedom Rides in 1961. She was beaten by police in Montgomery, arrested in Jackson, spent 2 months in Parchment Prison. They never got this necklace off her. When she was dying 15 years ago, she gave it to me and made me promise never to take it off." Dorothy paused. "So when your flight attendant demanded I remove it, she wasn't asking me to take off jewelry. She was asking me to deny my history, my mother's sacrifice, my family's legacy." Rodriguez's eyes shone. "I understand. I'm deeply sorry. What happens now? I'm upgrading you to first class. I know it doesn't make up for anything, and I'm personally ensuring your flight is perfect. I'm also recommending mandatory training on cultural sensitivity and implicit bias. Training is a start, but I want policy changes, written policies protecting passengers from discrimination. And I want a public apology from the airline, not to me, but to all passengers of color who experienced similar treatment and didn't have resources to fight back. I'll make sure that recommendation goes to our CEO and Miss Washington. I looked you up while security handled the situation. I know who you are. I know what you've done. It's an honor to have you on my flight. I'm ashamed one of my crew treated you this way." Dorothy smiled. "Real this time." "Thank you, Captain. I accept your apology." She settled into first class row 2. Roberto fussed over her. "Water orange juice." "Apologies." "Roberto, you didn't do anything wrong. I should have been there. Should have stopped it sooner." "Roberto, listen. You can't be everywhere. The passengers stood up for me. That matters more than you know." The plane finally pushed back 40 minutes late. Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. We had an incident requiring immediate attention that has been resolved. I want to make something clear. This airline does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. Every passenger deserves dignity and respect. If you experience or witness discrimination on our flights, report it immediately. We will take action." Applause erupted in the cabin. As the plane climbed, Dorothy looked out the window. She touched her mother's necklace. "I kept my promise, Mama, didn't take it off." Somewhere she imagined Ruth Washington smiling. Her phone buzzed constantly. James had lined up CNN, MSNBC local news. Video footage was going viral. Hashtags forming, hashtag justice for Dorothy, hashtag freedom rides jewelry, hashtag know your rights. What Dorothy didn't know was that in an airport security office, Cynthia Porter sat making everything exponentially worse. I want to press charges against that woman. She assaulted me. The security officers exchanged glances. They'd seen the videos. Ma'am, I'd recommend you stop talking and contact a lawyer. I want to press charges. Ma'am, the video shows you grabbing her first. I was doing my job. Your job is to grab passengers. She was being difficult. She asked to see policy. She should have just listened to me. There it was, the core belief. Dorothy should have obeyed without question, should have accepted authority without challenge, should have been smaller, more compliant because that's what Cynthia expected. I think you should leave, the supervisor said. You're suspended, no longer authorized in this secure area. Cynthia gathered her things and walked out of O'Hare for the last time as an airline employee. She had no idea that within hours her name would trend on social media, that her Facebook history would be uncovered years of racist posts, that former passengers would come forward with similar stories, that she'd become a symbol of everything wrong with how people of color are treated in America. Meanwhile, at 35,000 feet, Dorothy opened her book. Her mother's necklace gleamed against her chest, right where it belonged. But the real story was just beginning. Because when the plane landed in Atlanta, Dorothy would be met by news crews, civil rights leaders, and her granddaughter Maya, who'd seen the viral video and was bringing something Dorothy never expected, something that would turn this incident from a personal victory into a movement. And in a corporate office in Dallas, the airline CEO was watching the video footage for the third time, his face growing darker with each viewing. He picked up the phone. Get me the head of HR now in our crisis management team. We've got a problem and it's about to get a lot bigger. Because Cynthia Porter wasn't just a rogue employee, she was a symptom. And Dorothy Mae Washington, whether she knew it or not, had just pulled back the curtain on something much larger than one racist flight attendant. The question was, how far would this go? And the answer would shock everyone. The plane touched down in Atlanta at 3:47 p.m., and Dorothy's phone had 63 missed calls. "Mama, don't get off the plane yet," James said when she called him back. "There's media everywhere. CNN, Fox, local stations, they're all waiting at the gate." Dorothy looked out the window at the terminal. Through the glass, she could see camera crews setting up reporters, checking their hair, a crowd forming. "How did they get here so fast, Mama? You've been trending #1 on Twitter for the last hour. The video has 8 million views. 8 million. Dorothy's hand went to her necklace. 8 million people had watched Cynthia grab her, had watched her defend herself, had witnessed what happened when someone finally said enough. "Your granddaughter's here," James continued. "Maya saw the video in her dorm. She's got half of Spelman with her. There's also some civil rights leaders who want to meet you. And Mama Angela Davis is there. Angela Davis, she's in Atlanta for a speaking event. Saw the video, came to the airport." Dorothy closed her eyes. Angela Davis, the Angela Davis, the woman who'd fought alongside Dorothy's mother in the 1960s, who'd been on the FBI's most wanted list, who'd never stopped fighting. "I'm 72 years old, James. I just wanted to fly to my granddaughter's graduation. I know, Mama, but you did something today that people needed to see. You showed them what standing up looks like." Roberto appeared at her seat. "Miss Washington, Captain Rodriguez says you can detain whenever you're ready. He's cleared a path through first-class exit. Airport security will escort you." Dorothy stood, smoothed her pantsuit, touched her mother's necklace one more time. Then she stepped into the jetway. The noise hit her first shouting cameras, clicking, people chanting. As she emerged into the terminal, the crowd surged forward. Airport security formed a wall around her, but she could see past them to the faces. Young black women holding up signs. "We stand with Dorothy. Know your rights. Our heritage is not negotiable." an elderly white woman with tears streaming down her face, holding a sign that said, "I'm sorry we failed you." A group of Spelman students in their college sweatshirts chanting, "Justice for Dorothy, justice for all." And there at the front of the crowd was Maya. Dorothy's granddaughter was 21 beautiful, wearing her Spelman hoodie and her great-grandmother, Ruth's earrings, the ones Dorothy had given her last Christmas. When Maya saw Dorothy, she broke through the security line and threw her arms around her grandmother. "Nana." "Oh my God, Nana." Dorothy held her tight. "Baby girl, I'm okay. I saw the video. I saw what she did to you. I saw her grab you and Maya was crying now. I was so scared. I'm okay, I promise. You are so strong. You are so calm. You are everything Mama Ruth taught you to be." Dorothy pulled back to look at her granddaughter's face. "You're wearing her earrings. After I saw the video, I put them on. I wanted to feel close to her, close to you, close to all of us." A black woman in her 60s pushed through the crowd. Short, natural gray hair, glasses, an air of quiet authority that made people step aside without her having to ask. "Dorothy Washington." Dorothy turned. "I'm Angela Davis." For a moment, Dorothy couldn't speak. This woman, this icon, was standing in front of her in an airport terminal. "Miss Davis, I call me Angela, and I wanted to thank you." Angela took Dorothy's hands and hers. "What you did today reminded people that resistance isn't just for the young, that dignity isn't negotiable at any age. Your mother would be so proud. You knew my mother, Ruth Washington." Of course, I knew Ruth. We were arrested together in Birmingham in '63. She was one of the strongest women I ever met. Angela's eyes shone. And seeing you today, seeing you stand up to that flight attendant with the same courage Ruth had, it brought me right back to those days. Except this time we have video. This time millions of people are watching. This time they can't hide what happened. A reporter pushed forward. "Miss Washington Lisa Chen, CNN. Can we get a statement?" "Not yet." James appeared flanked by 2 other lawyers from his firm. "My mother will give a statement shortly. Right now. She needs a moment with her family. Just one question," another reporter shouted. "How do you feel about the airline's response?" Dorothy looked at James. "What response?" James held up his phone. "They issued a statement 20 minutes ago. Want to see it?" Dorothy took the phone and read. "We are aware of an incident on Flight 447 from Chicago to Atlanta. The employee involved has been terminated immediately. We apologize to Ms. Washington and are conducting a full investigation. We have zero tolerance for discrimination." "Terminated," Dorothy said quietly. "They fired her." "Good," Maya said fiercely. "She deserved it." But Dorothy felt something complicated twist in her chest. Yes, Cynthia had been wrong. Yes, she'd been racist and cruel and had assaulted her. But Dorothy had spent 40 years fighting for justice. And justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about change. "I want to give that statement now," Dorothy said. James looked surprised. "Mama, you don't have to. I want to." They set up in a corner of the terminal. Cameras formed a semicircle. Reporters jostled for position. Dorothy stood in the center. Maya on one side, Angela Davis on the other. "My name is Dorothy Mae Washington." She began, and her voice carried clear and strong across the terminal. "Today on a flight from Chicago to Atlanta, I was harassed by a flight attendant who demanded I remove my jewelry. When I asked to see the policy she was citing, she became hostile. When I continued to question her, she physically assaulted me by grabbing my wrist and attempting to rip my necklace from my neck. She paused, touching the necklace. This necklace belonged to my mother, Ruth Washington. She wore it during the Freedom Rides of 1961. She wore it when she was beaten by police in Montgomery, Alabama. She wore it when she was arrested in Jackson, Mississippi, and spent 2 months in Parchment Prison. On her deathbed, she gave it to me and made me promise never to take it off. This necklace represents my family's history, our resistance, our refusal to be made less than human." Her voice grew stronger. So when that flight attendant demanded I remove it, she wasn't asking me to take off jewelry. She was asking me to erase my history, to deny my mother's sacrifice, to pretend that what my family endured didn't matter. Dorothy looked directly at the cameras, and I refused. I will always refuse. Ms. Washington, a reporter called out, "The flight attendant was fired. Do you think that's sufficient?" "No." Dorothy said simply, "Firing one person doesn't fix a system. I've spent 40 years as a civil rights attorney, and I can tell you that Cynthia Porter isn't the problem. She's a symptom. The problem is a culture that allows people like her to thrive, that doesn't train employees to recognize their own bias, that doesn't protect passengers from discrimination." "So what do you want?" another reporter asked. "I want policy change. Real policy change. I want mandatory bias training for all airline employees. I want clear protections for passengers wearing cultural or religious items. I want an independent review board to investigate discrimination complaints. And I want the airline to issue a public apology not just to me, but to every passenger of color who's experienced similar treatment and didn't have the resources to fight back." Angela Davis leaned toward the microphone. "And she won't be fighting alone. The civil rights community stands with Dorothy Washington. We're putting airlines across this country on notice. This stops now." The reporters erupted with questions, but James stepped forward. "That's all for now. My mother needs to rest." As security escorted them through the terminal, Dorothy's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Miss Washington, this is Douglas Peterson, CEO of the airline." Dorothy stopped walking. The crowd around her kept moving, but she stood still in the middle of the terminal. "Mr. Peterson." "I've watched the video multiple times and I'm calling to apologize personally. What happened to you was inexcusable. Cynthia Porter has been terminated and we're reviewing every complaint ever filed against her." How many were there? Silence on the other end. Then 17 over 15 years. Dorothy closed her eyes. 17 complaints. 17 other passengers who'd been targeted, humiliated, possibly assaulted, and Cynthia had kept her job. Why wasn't she fired before? That's what I'm trying to understand. Someone in HR kept clearing her. Someone kept giving her second chances. And I'm going to find out who and why. Mr. Peterson firing Cynthia Porter isn't enough. I know. I heard your press conference and you're right. We need systemic change. So I'm asking you to help us. Join our advisory board. Help us rebuild our policies from the ground up. Make sure this never happens again. Dorothy looked at Maya, who was watching her with wide eyes. She looked at Angela, who nodded encouragingly. She looked at the crowd of young people holding signs, believing in her, believing in change. "I'll consider it," Dorothy said. "But I want full authority to review your training programs, your hiring practices, your complaint procedures, and I want transparency. Everything we do gets made public done, and I want compensation to be donated to civil rights organizations. I don't want your money for myself." "Whatever you want, Ms. Washington. Just please help us get this right." Dorothy hung up and looked at James. "Did that just happen?" James laughed. "Mama, you just negotiated a complete overhaul of airline discrimination policies in a 2-minute phone call. Yes, that just happened. But the day wasn't over. Not by a long shot." As they walked toward the exit, a young white woman approached. She was maybe 25, blonde, nervous. "Miss Washington, I'm so sorry to bother you. My name is Ashley Porter." Dorothy went very still. "Porter, Cynthia Porter, is my mother." The crowd around them quieted. Everyone was watching. Ashley's eyes were red, her voice shaking. "I saw the video and I just wanted to say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what my mother did to you. You don't need to apologize for her." "But I do." Ashley's voice broke. "Because I've been making excuses for her my whole life. When she'd say racist things at dinner, I'd tell myself she didn't mean it. When she'd complain about those people, I'd change the subject instead of calling her out. I've been complicit by staying silent." Dorothy studied this young woman, saw genuine anguish in her face. What you did today. Ashley continued, standing up to her, not backing down. You did what I should have done years ago, and I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed it took you, a stranger, to hold my mother accountable when I never did. Dorothy reached out and took Ashley's hand. You're doing it now. That takes courage. It's not enough. It's a start. Dorothy squeezed her hand. Your mother can still learn. People can change, but only if the people around them stop making excuses. Ashley nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm going to do better, I promise. As Ashley walked away, Angela touched Dorothy's arm. That was grace. Real grace, extending compassion to the daughter of the woman who assaulted you. She's not her mother, Dorothy said simply. She gets to choose who she becomes. They finally made it outside to where James had a car waiting. But before Dorothy could get in, a group of elderly black women approached. They moved slowly, some with canes, some with walkers, but they were determined. The woman in front was probably 80 silver hair eyes, sharp and bright. Dorothy Washington, I'm Evelyn James. We flew up from Birmingham when we saw the news. Birmingham. We were freedom riders, too. Rode with your mama on the Greyhound in '61. Ruth Washington saved my life that day. When the mob came after us in Anniston, when they set the bus on fire, Ruth grabbed me and pulled me through the flames. I've got the scars to prove it. Evelyn pulled up her sleeve, showing old burn marks on her arm, and I've been wearing this ever since. She touched a gold necklace at her throat, nearly identical to Dorothy's. Ruth gave it to me. Said we were sisters, now bonded by fire. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. When I saw that flight attendant try to rip your necklace off, I felt it. Felt like she was trying to rip off our history, erase what we went through. And watching you stand up to her, watching you defend your mama's legacy, she couldn't continue. Dorothy embraced her, and suddenly all the elderly women were surrounding them, holding each other, crying together. These women who'd been beaten and arrested and traumatized in the fight for civil rights, who'd carried those wounds for 60 years, who'd watched Dorothy's video and felt seen. Thank you, Evelyn whispered. Thank you for reminding the world that we mattered, that what we did mattered. A young reporter pushed forward. Miss James, I'm Kesha Williams, local news. Can I ask you something? Evelyn wiped her eyes. Go ahead, baby. Do you think things have gotten better since the 1960s? Evelyn looked at Dorothy, then back at the reporter. Better in some ways, yes. We can vote now without literacy tests. We can eat in any restaurant. Our children can go to any school. But better isn't the same as good. Better isn't the same as equal. What happened to Dorothy today? That's the same spirit that sent dogs after us in Birmingham, that turned fire hoses on us in Selma. It's more polite now, more subtle, hidden behind policies and procedures, but the hate underneath that hasn't changed nearly enough. She turned to the camera. So to all you young people watching this video, sharing it, getting angry about it, good. Stay angry, because anger is what changes things. Your anger about what happened to Dorothy today is the same anger that fueled us 60 years ago. Don't let anyone tell you you're overreacting. Don't let anyone say it's not that bad. It is that bad, and it won't change unless you make it change. The crowd erupted in applause. Dorothy's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Marcus Johnson from the flight. Just got called by Good Morning America. They want me to come on tomorrow morning to talk about what happened. Wanted to check with you first. Don't want to tell your story without permission. Dorothy smiled and texted back. Tell it. Tell all of it. The world needs to hear. Another text, this time from David Turner, the young law student. Professor at Northwestern, just showed your video in civil rights law class. Standing ovation. You're teaching the next generation. And another from Helen Fitzgerald, the white passenger who'd spoken up. My daughter called. She's been quiet about racism for years, afraid to rock the boat. Your courage gave her courage. She just confronted her boss about discrimination at work. Thank you. Dorothy looked at Maya. How did this happen? I just wanted to fly to your graduation. Maya took her grandmother's hand. Nana, you've been preparing for this your whole life. Every case you fought, every client you defended, every time you stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves, it was all leading to this moment. I'm tired, baby girl, I know. But Mama Ruth always said, being tired doesn't mean you stop. It means you're doing something worth doing. Dorothy laughed despite herself. Your great-grandmother was a wise woman. She was, and she raised you right, and you raised Daddy right, and Daddy raised me right. That's how it works. We pass the strength down. As they drove toward Mia's campus, Dorothy's phone rang again. This time, it was a number she recognized. Hello, Dorothy. It's Patricia. Patricia Moore. Dorothy sat up. Patricia Moore had been her law partner for 30 years. They'd retired together, promised to play golf and travel and finally relax. Patricia, you saw. Everyone saw. And Dorothy, I need to tell you something. I got a call from the Southern Poverty Law Center. They want to file a class action lawsuit against the airline on behalf of all passengers who've experienced discrimination. They want you to be the lead plaintiff. Dorothy's heart started pounding. A class action. They've already found 43 people willing to testify. 43 passengers, all people of color, all with stories similar to yours. Some with video evidence, some with witness statements. Dorothy, this could be huge. This could change how every airline in America handles discrimination complaints. Dorothy looked out the window at Atlanta passing by. 43 people, 43 stories of being targeted, humiliated, made to feel less than. And how many more who never reported it, who just swallowed the indignity and moved on? I'll do it, Dorothy said. You're sure class action lawsuits take years. You'll be in the public eye. It'll consume your life. Patricia, I'm 72 years old. I've already had my career. I've already lived my life. If I can spend whatever time I have left making sure this doesn't happen to someone else's granddaughter, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. She hung up and looked at Maya. Cancel your graduation party plans. What, why? Because we're not celebrating with cake and balloons. We're celebrating by filing the biggest discrimination lawsuit the airline industry has ever seen. Maya's face split into a grin. Nana, you're incredible. No, baby girl, I'm just done being quiet. Maya's graduation was supposed to be at 10 a.m. on Saturday. By Friday night, it had turned into something else entirely. Nana, they're saying 5,000 people are coming. Maya stared at her phone, scrolling through social media, not just for graduation, for you. They want to see you speak. Dorothy sat in Mia's dorm room exhausted. It was 11 p.m. She'd done 6 interviews that day. Her voice was not speaking at your graduation, baby. That's your day. But President Johnson called. She wants you to give the commencement address. Absolutely not. Nana, Maya, this is your moment. You've worked 4 years for this. I'm not taking it from you. Maya's roommate Destiny looked up from her laptop. Miss Washington, you don't understand. We want this. The whole senior class voted. We want you to speak. You voted. Emergency meeting this afternoon. 847 seniors. 843 voted yes. You got 99.5% approval. Destiny grinned. You're more popular than Beyoncé. Dorothy's phone rang. James again. Mama, don't do the speech. I already said no. Good, because I just got a threat assessment from the FBI. There are credible threats against you. White supremacist groups planning to protest tomorrow. Some making violent threats. FBI wants to cancel the graduation. Dorothy's blood ran cold. They can't cancel these girls' graduation because of me. Mama, they're talking about bringing guns to a college campus to get to you. Then I won't go. That's not going to stop them. They know where you are. Maya's dorm has been doxxed. Her room number is on Nazi websites. Maya grabbed the phone. Daddy, what, baby girl, pack a bag? FBI is moving both of you to a safe house tonight. No. Maya's voice was steel. No, I'm not hiding. I'm not missing my graduation because some racist cowards are threatening us. Maya, Daddy, listen to me. If we hide, they win. If we cancel graduation, they win. If we let them silence Nana, they win. I'm walking across that stage tomorrow and Nana's giving that speech. And if they want to try something, they'll have to go through 5,000 Spellman sisters first. Dorothy heard James take a shaky breath. You sound just like your grandmother. Both of them. Good. That's exactly who I want to sound like. He hung up. Maya looked at Dorothy with fire in her eyes. We're doing this, Nana. Baby, it's not safe. Nothing we do is ever really safe. Mama Ruth knew that. You know that. Every time we stand up, we risk something. But that's the point. That's how change happens. Dorothy pulled Maya into her arms, held her tight, and felt her mother's spirit in this fierce young woman. At midnight, Dorothy's phone rang again. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello. Heavy breathing on the other end, then a woman's voice shaking with rage. You ruined my life. Dorothy sat up. Who is this? You know who this is. You cost me my job, my career. 25 years gone because you couldn't just follow simple instructions. Cynthia Porter. You assaulted me, Dorothy said quietly. I touched your wrist. That's not assault. You grabbed me. You tried to rip off my necklace. That ghetto jewelry. Stop. Stop right there. Dorothy's voice cut like a blade. You're calling me at midnight to justify what you did, to blame me for the consequences of your own actions. I have 3 kids. How am I supposed to feed my kids? You should have thought of that before you targeted a passenger because of her race. I'm not racist. Cynthia's voice rose to a shriek. I'm not. I treat everyone the same. Then why was I the only one you asked to remove jewelry? Why did you tell me I should know better at my age? Why did you say this isn't the 1960s anymore? Silence on the other end. You're not calling for an apology, Dorothy said. You're calling to make yourself feel better, to make me the villain in your story. But I'm not the villain, Cynthia. You are. And until you can admit that nothing will change for you, you're going to pay for this. Cynthia's voice went cold. I'm suing you for defamation, for assault, for go ahead, sue me. I have video evidence, 40 witnesses, and a legal career that's longer than you've been alive. I'll see you in court. Dorothy hung up and immediately called James. She just threatened to sue me. Let her try. We'll counter-sue for assault harassment and emotional distress. Mama, did you record that call? Numbers start recording everything. Every call, every message, everything. She's building a case to make herself the victim. At 2 a.m., Maya shook Dorothy awake. Nana, you need to see this. On Maya's laptop was a Fox News segment. The chyron read, Fired flight attendant speaks out. Cynthia Porter sat across from the host, tears streaming down her face. I made a simple request based on airline safety policy, Cynthia said, dabbing her eyes, and she became combative. She grabbed my wrist and twisted it. I think she broke something. But because she's a civil rights lawyer, because she has connections, I'm the one who got fired. I'm the one being called a racist on national television. The host leaned forward sympathetically. You're saying you're the real victim here. I'm saying there are 2 sides to every story, and my side isn't being heard. Dorothy watched in disbelief as Cynthia painted herself as a hard-working mother who'd been fired for doing her job, who'd been assaulted by an aggressive passenger who was now receiving death threats and couldn't feed her children. She's lying, Maya whispered. She's completely lying. I know. We have the video. I know, baby, but look at the comments. Maya scrolled down. Hundreds of comments supporting Cynthia, calling Dorothy a race baiter, saying she'd played the race card, saying she'd assaulted a white woman and gotten away with it because of her connections. How can they watch the same video we watched and see something completely different? Mia's voice broke. Because they want to. Because believing Cynthia means they don't have to confront their own bias. Because admitting I was right means admitting the system is broken. Dorothy's phone exploded with messages. News outlets wanting her response, supporters outraged at Cynthia's interview, and most disturbing messages from people who believed Cynthia's version, who were now calling Dorothy the aggressor. At 6 a.m., Dorothy gave up on sleep. She sat in Maya's dorm common room drinking terrible coffee when Evelyn James appeared. Saw you needed some company, Evelyn said, settling into the chair beside her. Couldn't sleep either after watching that woman lie on television. How do I fight this, Dorothy asked. She's rewriting what happened, same way we fought in the 60s. With truth, with witnesses, with evidence. Dorothy, you've got something we never had back then. Video. She can lie all she wants, but that video doesn't lie. But people are believing her anyway. Some people will always believe the lie. That's not new. What's new is that millions more believe you. Focus on them. Focus on the change you're creating. At 8 a.m., the Southern Poverty Law Center lawyers arrived at Maya's dorm. Miss Washington, I'm Rebecca Stein, lead counsel. We need to talk about the class action. They spread documents across the common room table. 43 plaintiffs had grown to 78 overnight. Stories poured in. A Muslim woman told to remove her hijab. A Sikh man ordered to take off his turban. An Asian woman accused of hiding contraband in her traditional dress. A black teenager handcuffed for suspicious behavior that turned out to be reading a book. We have documentation going back 15 years. Rebecca said internal airline memos showing they knew about discrimination complaints and did nothing. Training materials that are frankly horrifying in their implicit bias. And communications between HR and management explicitly protecting employees with multiple complaints. They knew, Dorothy said. They knew they chose profits over people. They chose protecting their employees over protecting passengers. And we're going to prove it in court when preliminary hearing is Monday, 2 days from now. Judge Catherine Blackwell. She's tough but fair. We're requesting class certification and immediate injunctive relief mandatory training policy changes independent oversight. The airline will fight it hard. Dorothy looked at the stack of complaints, each one a story of humiliation and pain. I'm ready. At 9:30 a.m., Dorothy and Maya walked toward the graduation venue. FBI agents flanked them. Spelman security had locked down the campus. Metal detectors had been set up at every entrance, and the protesters were already there. On one side of the street, white supremacists held signs, "All lives matter, stop race baiting, support Cynthia Porter." Some wore MAGA hats. Some carried Confederate flags. They shouted at students arriving for graduation, hurling slurs and insults. On the other side, an even larger crowd held counter-protest signs. Black Lives Matter, Justice for Dorothy, Our Heritage Matters. Civil rights leaders stood with Spelman students and alumni. Evelyn and the Freedom Riders formed a human chain linking arms singing, "We shall overcome." Dorothy stopped walking. The hate on those protesters' faces. She'd seen it before. In Montgomery and Birmingham, in 1,000 towns across the South, where she'd fought for basic human dignity. "Keep moving, Miss Washington," an FBI agent said. But Dorothy couldn't move. She stood frozen, staring at a sign that read, "Dorothy Washington is a racist liar." Maya grabbed her hand. "Nana, don't look at them. Look at us." She gestured to the other side of the street where thousands of people cheered as Dorothy appeared. Students chanted her name. Alumni wept. A group of elderly black women in church hats raised their fists in solidarity. "See them," Maya said. "That's who matters, not the hate, the love." They walked into the venue, a massive auditorium packed with graduates, families, and supporters. Dorothy sat on the stagehands, shaking as the ceremony began. President Johnson approached the podium. "Today we honor our graduates, young women who've worked tirelessly for 4 years to reach this moment. But we also honor a woman who's fought tirelessly for 72 years. A woman who reminded us this week that the struggle for civil rights isn't over, that dignity isn't negotiable, that standing up for yourself isn't just brave, it's necessary." The crowd erupted in applause. Dorothy Mae Washington argued before the Supreme Court twice. She fought discrimination cases that changed laws and changed lives. She spent 40 years demanding justice for those who had none. And this week, at 72 years old, she showed us that courage has no age limit. President Johnson turned to Dorothy. "Miss Washington, would you please join me?" Dorothy stood on shaking legs and walked to the podium. 5,000 people rose to their feet. The ovation lasted 3 minutes. Students cried, faculty applauded, even the FBI agents at the doors were clapping. Dorothy gripped the podium and looked out at all those faces. She saw Maya in the front row beaming. She saw Evelyn and the Freedom Riders. She saw Angela Davis. She saw young faces and old faces and faces of every color, all looking at her with hope. "I'm 72 years old," Dorothy began, her voice carrying across the auditorium. "And I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting battles my mother fought. I'm tired of explaining why discrimination is wrong. I'm tired of proving my humanity to people who refuse to see it." The room went silent. "But you know what I'm not tired of? I'm not tired of winning. I'm not tired of seeing young women like you." She gestured to the graduates standing on the shoulders of women like my mother, reaching higher than we ever dreamed. "I'm not tired of watching the arc of the moral universe bend toward justice, even when it bends so slowly it feels like it's barely moving at all." Her voice grew stronger. "This week, a flight attendant targeted me because of my race. She demanded I remove my mother's jewelry that represents my family's history of resistance, and I refused. Not because I wanted to cause trouble, not because I wanted attention, but because my mother taught me something essential. Dignity is not negotiable." She paused. "Let that sink in. Some people are calling me divisive. Some say I played the race card. Some say I'm making this about race when it wasn't. To those people, I say you're right. I did make it about race because it was about race. From the moment that flight attendant looked at my black face and saw someone she could target with impunity. It was about race when she told me, this isn't the 1960s anymore, as if I should be grateful for the progress that allows me to sit in an airplane seat without a sign saying whites only. It was about race when she grabbed my wrist and tried to rip off a necklace my mother wore during the Freedom Rides. The audience was dead silent, hanging on every word. So yes, I'm making it about race because racism doesn't go away by ignoring it. It doesn't disappear because we're uncomfortable talking about it. It gets confronted. It gets challenged. It gets fought over and over again until one day, maybe not in my lifetime, but maybe in yours, it finally loses." She looked directly at the graduates. "You're walking out of here today with degrees from one of the finest institutions in this country. Some of you will become doctors, some lawyers, some teachers, engineers, artists, leaders. And every single one of you will face moments where you have to choose between staying silent and speaking up, between accepting injustice and fighting it, between making yourself smaller to make others comfortable, and standing tall in who you are." Her voice rang out clear and strong. "When those moments come, and they will come, I want you to remember this week. Remember that a 72-year-old woman refused to take off her mother's necklace. Remember that she stood her ground against someone in authority who expected obedience. Remember that she didn't back down even when it would have been easier, even when it would have been safer, even when she was tired and just wanted to fly to her granddaughter's graduation in peace. Tears streamed down faces across the auditorium, because that's what resistance looks like. It's not always dramatic. It's not always on the front page. Sometimes it's just saying no. Sometimes it's just asking questions. Sometimes it's just refusing to accept that the way things are is the way things have to be. She looked at Maya. My granddaughter is graduating today. She's brilliant, fierce, and unstoppable. And she's wearing her great G grandmother's earrings, the same earrings Ruth Washington wore when she was arrested for sitting at a whites-only lunch counter in 1962. That's how we pass the strength down. Through stories, through jewelry, through refusing to let anyone make us less than we are. Dorothy's voice broke just slightly. My mother died 15 years ago, but she's here today in this necklace, in these stories, in every woman who refuses to be silenced. And she's so proud. Proud of me for standing up. Proud of Maya for being fearless. Proud of all of you for being the generation that won't settle for better when you deserve equal. She gripped the podium. So go out there and make trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. Stand up, speak out, don't back down. And when people tell you you're being too loud, too aggressive, too much, remember that those are the words they used against every woman who ever changed the world. Wear them like a badge of honor. The auditorium exploded. People leaped to their feet. The roar was deafening. Students rushed the stage. Maya reached her grandmother first, wrapping her in a fierce hug as cameras flashed, and the crowd roared approval. But outside, the white supremacist protesters heard the speech broadcast over speakers, and they were enraged. As the ceremony ended, as graduates filed out clutching their diplomas, the protesters surged forward. They broke through one security barrier. FBI agents scrambled. Students screamed. A protester threw something, a bottle glass, flying through the air toward the stage where Dorothy stood. Marcus Johnson, the lawyer from the flight, who'd recorded everything, dove in front of Dorothy. The bottle hit him in the shoulder, shattered. Blood bloomed across his shirt. Chaos erupted. Security rushed the stage. Students fought back against protesters. Evelyn and the Freedom Riders locked arms, forming a human shield around Dorothy and Maya. And in that moment, Dorothy understood something profound. This wasn't just about a flight attendant anymore. This was about something bigger. This was about every fight her mother had fought, every battle the civil rights movement had waged, every inch of progress that had been won, and was now being defended once again. Get her out of here. James appeared flanked by FBI agents. They formed a tight circle around Dorothy and Maya, moving them toward an exit. But Dorothy stopped. She turned back to the stage, to the microphone still on. "No," she said. "Mama, we have to go." "No." Dorothy pulled away from James, walked back to the podium. Her voice boomed across the loudspeakers, reaching even the protesters outside. "You think you can silence me with violence. You think you can intimidate me with bottles and threats. My mother survived worse. She survived beatings and arrests and fire hoses and bombs. She survived because she refused to be afraid, and so do I." The protesters outside went quiet hearing her voice. "You can call me names. You can threaten me. You can throw all the bottles you want, but you cannot make me take off this necklace. You cannot make me deny my history. You cannot make me be less than I am, because I am Dorothy Mae Washington, daughter of Ruth Washington, and I am done being quiet." The silence that followed was absolute. Then from somewhere in the crowd of Spelman students, someone started clapping. Then another, until 5,000 people were applauding, stomping, cheering, drowning out the hate with love. And the protesters, faced with that wall of sound, that tsunami of solidarity, began to retreat. Dorothy walked off the stage, Maya on one side, James on the other, Evelyn and the Freedom Riders surrounding them. They moved through the crowd of students who reached out to touch her hand, to thank her, to tell her she'd changed their lives. Marcus Johnson, blood still seeping through his shirt, appeared beside her. "Mrs. Washington." "I'm okay. Just a cut. You took that bottle for me. You stood up for all of us. I'd take 1,000 bottles." They reached the car. FBI agents hustled them inside. As they pulled away from campus, Dorothy looked back at the crowd of students still celebrating, still chanting her name, still believing that change was possible. Her phone rang. Rebecca Stein, the lawyer. "Dorothy, judge moved up the hearing tomorrow, Sunday. She wants to hear the case immediately. We're going to court in 18 hours. Dorothy closed her eyes. No rest, no break, just straight from graduation to courtroom. "I'll be ready. There's something else. We have a leak. Someone inside the airline. They're sending us documents. Thousands of pages. Internal communications showing the company knew about systematic discrimination and actively covered it up. This is bigger than we thought. Much bigger. How much bigger this could bring down the entire executive team. Maybe even force a government investigation of the whole industry." Dorothy looked at Maya, exhausted and exhilarated beside her. She looked at James, worried but proud. She thought about her mother, about all those freedom writers, about 72 years of fighting battles that never seemed to end. And she thought about Cynthia Porter on Fox News playing the victim rewriting history. Good, Dorothy said. Let's burn it all down and build it better. Sunday morning, 5 a.m. Dorothy hadn't slept. She sat in James' home office surrounded by boxes of documents, the leak from inside the airline. Thousands of pages, emails, memos, training materials, complaint records. Rebecca Stein had been reading for 3 hours straight. Her face grew darker with each page. "This is worse than I thought," Rebecca said. "Much worse." James looked up from his laptop. "How much worse?" "They didn't just ignore complaints, they actively suppressed them. Look at this." Rebecca held up an email from the VP of HR to regional managers regarding discrimination complaints. Prioritize employee retention over customer satisfaction. Settle quietly when necessary, but protect our people first. Dorothy felt sick. They had a policy of protecting discriminatory employees, not just a policy, a directive from the top. Rebecca pulled up another document and looked at the settlements. 47 in the last 10 years. 47 passengers paid off to stay quiet. NDA signed. Stories buried. How much money, Maya asked. She'd been up all night helping sort documents. Total $3.2 million in hush money. James whistled. "That's a pattern. That's a conspiracy. That's a criminal cover-up," Rebecca corrected. "This isn't just civil liability anymore. This could be federal charges, mail fraud, wire fraud, civil rights violations under federal statute." Dorothy's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered on speaker. "Miss Washington, please don't hang up." The voice was young, female, terrified. "My name is Jennifer Chen. I'm a senior analyst in the airlines HR department. I'm the one who sent you the documents." Everyone in the room froze. "Why?" Dorothy asked. "Because I couldn't stay silent anymore. I've watched this company destroy people's lives for 5 years. I've watched them pay off victims. I've watched them promote employees with multiple complaints because they were team players. I've watched them." Her voice broke. "I watched them ruin my best friend. She was a gate agent. She reported a supervisor for racist harassment. They transferred her to the worst routes, gave her terrible schedules, made her life hell until she quit. And I did nothing. I was scared I'd lose my job too. But you're coming forward now because of you. Watching you stand up to Cynthia Porter, watching you refuse to back down. I realized I've been complicit. I've been part of the problem. So I copied everything. 5 years of documents, every complaint, every settlement, every internal communication about covering up discrimination. It's all there. Jennifer, you know this could cost you everything, Rebecca said. I know, but staying silent already cost me everything that matters. My integrity, my self-respect, my ability to look at myself in the mirror. We're going to need you to testify, Rebecca said in court today. Silence on the phone then. Okay, I'll do it. But they're going to come after me hard. We'll protect you. I promise. Jennifer hung up. Dorothy looked at Rebecca. Can we actually protect her? No, Rebecca said honestly. We can try, but she's right. They're going to destroy her professionally, probably legally too. They'll sue her for breach of confidentiality, theft of proprietary information, violating her NDA. They'll make her unemployable. Then we can't ask her to testify. Dorothy, without her testimony, these documents might not be admissible. We need her to authenticate them to explain the context, to put a human face on the corporate malfeasance. Dorothy thought about Jennifer Chen, young, scared, risking everything because an old woman refused to take off a necklace. We'll take care of her, Dorothy said. After this is over, whatever she needs, legal fees, living expenses, new career, whatever it takes. That could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then we'll find hundreds of thousands of dollars. At 7 a.m., Dorothy's doorbell rang. James answered it and came back looking shell-shocked. Mama, you need to see this. Outside James' house, news vans lined the street. Reporters camped on the lawn. And standing at the front of the crowd was Cynthia Porter, flanked by her own lawyers. Ms. Washington, Cynthia shouted, I'm here to handle a lawsuit, defamation, assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and destruction of my career. I'm suing you for $10 million. Cameras swarmed. Reporters shouted questions. Cynthia held up documents for the cameras. This woman has painted me as a monster, Cynthia declared. She's destroyed my reputation, cost me my job, made me unemployable. My children are receiving death threats. My house has been vandalized, all because I asked a passenger to follow airline policy. Dorothy watched from the window. Maya stood beside her, shaking with rage. She's lying, Nana. She's standing on our lawn, lying to the world. I know, baby. We have to go out there. We have to tell them the truth. No. Dorothy's voice was calm. We tell the truth in court, not in a media circus on someone's front lawn. James made a phone call. Within minutes, police arrived to clear the reporters from private property. But Cynthia had accomplished her goal. Every news outlet in America now had footage of her personally serving Dorothy with a lawsuit, playing the victim crying for the cameras. At 9 a.m., they arrived at the federal courthouse. A massive crowd had gathered supporters and protesters, separated by police barricades. Dorothy walked through the gauntlet cameras, flashing people, screaming her name from both sides. Inside the courtroom, Judge Catherine Blackwell presided. She was 65, black, with a reputation for being brilliant and taking no nonsense from anyone. This is a preliminary hearing for class certification in Washington versus Northern Star Airlines. Judge Blackwell began. I've reviewed the initial filings. Miss Stein, you're requesting class certification for all passengers who've experienced discrimination on Northern Star flights in the past 10 years. Yes, Your Honor. We currently have 78 named plaintiffs with documented incidents. We believe there are potentially thousands more. The airline's lawyer stood. A white man in his 60s expensive suit practiced arrogance. Your Honor, I'm Robert Hastings, representing Northern Star Airlines. This is a frivolous lawsuit based on a single incident that's been wildly mischaracterized in the media. Ms. Washington was asked to comply with a reasonable safety regulation and chose to escalate the situation for publicity. Judge Blackwell looked at him over her glasses. Mr. Hastings, I've watched the video multiple times. That's not what happened. Your Honor, that video has been edited. It's continuous footage from 4 different angles, all time-stamped, all showing the same events. Unless you're suggesting a vast conspiracy among passengers who didn't know each other, that video shows exactly what happened. Hastings' face reened. Your Honor, we're asking that this case be dismissed outright. Ms. Washington was removed from the flight. Ms. Washington flew first class to Atlanta and arrived safely. She was not removed from any flight because our captain overreacted to pressure. Your captain watched an employee assault a passenger and made the correct decision to remove that employee. Judge Blackwell's voice was ice. Mr. Hastings, I suggest you focus on the actual legal issues rather than trying to rewrite reality. Dorothy watched the judge with growing respect. This was a woman who knew exactly what was happening and wasn't playing games. Miss Stein, Judge Blackwell continued, What's your evidence of systematic discrimination? Rebecca stood, Your Honor, we have documentation of 47 settlements in 10 years, all involving passengers of color reporting discrimination. We have internal communication showing company policy to suppress complaints rather than address them. We have training materials that perpetuate racial stereotypes. And we have testimony from 78 plaintiffs with similar experiences. Your Honor, those settlements were confidential, Hastings objected. Not anymore, Rebecca said. We've received extensive documentation from a whistleblower inside the company. Documents that show a pattern of deliberate systematic discrimination enabled and protected by corporate policy. Hastings went pale. Your Honor, any such documents were stolen and are inadmissible. That's for me to decide. Mr. Hastings, Mrs. Stein, who is this whistleblower Jennifer Chen, senior analyst in Northern Star's HR department. She's here to testify today. A commotion in the back of the courtroom. 3 men in suits burst through the doors. Northern Star's security team and lawyers. Your Honor, one of them shouted. Jennifer Chen is under employment contract with strict confidentiality provisions. She cannot testify without violating that contract. Judge Blackwell banged her gavel. Counsel approached the bench. Now the lawyers huddled with the judge, arguing in fierce whispers. Dorothy couldn't hear what was being said, but she watched the judge's expression grow darker and darker. Finally, Judge Blackwell leaned back. Here's what's going to happen. Miss Chen will testify. If your company chooses to sue her for breach of contract afterward, that's your prerogative. But in this courtroom right now, she's going to tell the truth. And if any of you try to intimidate her or interfere with her testimony, I will hold you in contempt so fast your heads will spin. Am I clear? The lawyers retreated. Jennifer Chen took the stand. She was 28, Asian American, visibly terrified. Her hands shook as she was sworn in. Rebecca began gently. Miss Chen, how long have you worked for Northern Star Airlines? 5 years. And what is your position, senior analyst in HR? I handle employee complaints and disciplinary records. In that capacity, have you observed patterns of discrimination? Jennifer took a shaky breath. Yes, extensively. Can you describe those patterns? We receive approximately 30 to 40 discrimination complaints per month from passengers. That's about 400 to 500 per year, but only about 5% ever result in any disciplinary action. The rest are either dismissed as misunderstandings or the employees are quietly transferred to different routes. Why? Because upper management made it clear that keeping employees happy was more important than addressing passenger complaints. There's an internal metric called employee retention value that affects executive bonuses. The fewer employees we fire, the higher the bonuses, so complaints get buried. The courtroom erupted. Judge Blackwell banged her gavel. Miss Chen Rebecca continued. Did you have direct knowledge of complaints against Cynthia Porter? Yes, she had 17 complaints over 15 years. 11 were specifically about racial discrimination. The others were general hostility and unprofessional behavior. 17 complaints. Why wasn't she fired? Her supervisor protected her, said she was old school and just needs retraining. After each complaint, she'd take an online sensitivity course and go right back to work. Nothing changed. Do you have documentation of this? Yes, it's in the files I provided to Ms. Stein. Hastings shot to his feet. Your Honor, I object. This testimony is based on stolen confidential company documents. Overruled. Sit down, Mr. Hastings. Rebecca pulled up a document on the courtroom screen, an email from Northern Star's VP of HR. Miss Chen, can you identify this document? Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. That's from my boss. Sent to all HR managers last year. Rebecca read aloud, Team reminder that our priority is protecting the company from liability. When addressing passenger complaints, focus on de-escalation and settlement rather than employee discipline. Remember, every termination is a potential wrongful dismissal lawsuit. Better to pay off a passenger quietly than deal with employment litigation. The courtroom exploded again. Reporters typed frantically. Supporters gasped. Even Judge Blackwell looked shocked. Your Honor, Rebecca said, this email explicitly instructs HR staff to prioritize protecting discriminatory employees over protecting passengers. This isn't negligence. This is policy. Hastings was on his feet. Your Honor, this is taken out of context. What context makes that email acceptable? Mr. Hastings, Judge Blackwell's voice could have cut steel. Your Honor, every company has internal communications that could sound bad. If this doesn't sound bad, counsel, this is bad. This is potentially criminal. The doors burst open again. This time it was Douglas Peterson, the airline CEO, flanked by more lawyers. Your Honor. Peterson's lead attorney said, We're requesting an immediate recess. My client needs to consult with his board of directors. Your client can consult with whoever he wants on his own time. Right now, we're in the middle of testimony. Your Honor, please. This hearing is turning into a media circus. This hearing is exposing systematic civil rights violations by your company. If that's uncomfortable for you, that's not my problem. Peterson himself stepped forward. Your Honor, I'm Douglas Peterson, CEO of Northern Star Airlines. I'm asking respectfully for an opportunity to address these allegations directly. Judge Blackwell studied him. You want to testify, I want to speak to explain our side. Mr. Peterson, anything you say can and will be used against you and your company. I strongly advise you to consult with your attorneys before I don't care. I need to say this. His lawyers looked horrified, but Peterson took the stand. Rebecca approached him like a shark circling prey. Mr. Peterson, did you know about the email we just discussed? No, I had no knowledge of that communication. You're the CEO. How could you not know your VP of HR was instructing staff to cover up discrimination complaints? I trusted my senior leadership to handle HR matters appropriately. Clearly, that trust was misplaced. So you're saying your own executives were acting without your knowledge. I'm saying I'm learning about a lot of things today that I should have known about years ago, and I take full responsibility for that failure. Dorothy watched him carefully. He looked genuinely shaken. Either he was a brilliant actor or he'd actually been kept in the dark by his own team. Mr. Peterson, Rebecca continued, Are you aware that your company has paid out $3.2 million in discrimination settlements? Over the past 10 years, Peterson's face went white. What $3.2 million to silence 47 passengers who reported discrimination, all with NDAs. Did you approve those settlements? I don't approve every settlement. We have legal affairs that handles. So your legal department was spending millions of dollars of company money to cover up civil rights violations, and you never questioned where that money was going. We have a legal settlement budget for various Mr. Peterson. Yes or no? Did you know your company was systematically paying off victims of discrimination? No. I swear I did not know. Then who did? Peterson looked at his lawyers, then back at Rebecca. I want immunity before I answer that. The courtroom went silent. Judge Blackwell leaned forward. Immunity from what, Mr. Peterson? From prosecution. Because if I tell you what I know, people are going to prison. The explosion of sound was deafening. Reporters rushed the doors. Bafe struggled to maintain order. Judge Blackwell banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. I will clear this courtroom. Slowly, the chaos subsided. Everyone sat back down, but the energy in the room was electric. Mr. Peterson, Judge Blackwell said carefully, I cannot grant you immunity. That's a matter for the district attorney, but I'm going to take a 30-minute recess to allow you to consult with your attorneys and to contact the DA's office. Court is in recess. She banged the gavel and disappeared into her chambers. Dorothy sat stunned. Maya grabbed her hand. Nana, what just happened? The CEO just implied there's a criminal conspiracy inside his own company. James leaned over. Mama, this is bigger than we thought. Much bigger. Rebecca was already on the phone with someone. When she hung up, she looked shaken. The district attorney is sending someone over. They want to open a criminal investigation. Dorothy, your lawsuit just became a federal case. In the chaos of the recess, Dorothy's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You have no idea what you've started. Drop this now or people are going to get hurt. She showed it to James. That's a threat. We need to report this to the FBI. The FBI is already here. Dorothy nodded toward two agents standing by the doors watching everything. Another text. Your granddaughter walks to class alone every Tuesday and Thursday. Nice girl. Would hate to see something happen to her. Dorothy's blood ran cold. They were threatening Maya. She stood up, walked directly to the FBI agents, and showed them the texts. We need protection for my granddaughter now. The agents made calls. Within minutes, a security team was being dispatched to Spellman. But Dorothy's mind was racing. Who sent those texts? Someone inside the airline. Someone outside. Someone who felt threatened by what was being exposed in this courtroom. The 30-minute recess stretched to an hour, then 2 hours. Judge Blackwell finally returned, looking grim. The district attorney's office has informed me that they're opening a criminal investigation into Northern Star Airlines. This preliminary hearing will be continued pending that investigation. However, I am granting the plaintiff's request for immediate injunctive relief. Northern Star Airlines is hereby ordered to implement mandatory anti-bias training for all employees. Within 60 days, establish an independent review board for discrimination complaints within 90 days, and halt all enforcement of confidential settlements that prevent victims from speaking about their experiences. Any such NDAs are void as of today. The supporters in the courtroom erupted in cheers. Furthermore, Judge Blackwell continued, I'm issuing a protective order for Monsieur Washington, Ms. Chen, and all named plaintiffs in this case. Any attempts to intimidate, threaten, or retaliate against them will be treated as criminal contempt of this court. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. As they filed out of the courtroom, reporters mobbed them. Dorothy pushed through the crowd, exhausted, overwhelmed, just wanting to get to somewhere quiet. But outside the courthouse, another crowd waited. Thousands of people. They'd been watching the proceedings on live stream, and they'd heard everything. When Dorothy emerged, they roared, chanted her name, held signs reading, Justice prevails and Dorothy Washington for president. And at the front of the crowd, holding a sign that read, I'm sorry, stood Ashley Porter, Cynthia's daughter. Dorothy stopped. The crowd quieted. Ashley approached, tears streaming down her face. My mother is wrong. She's always been wrong, and I'm done protecting her. I'm done making excuses. I'm here to say publicly what she did to you was racist, cruel, and inexcusable, and I support you completely. She handed the sign to Dorothy, then walked away before Dorothy could respond. Dorothy stood holding that sign, I'm sorry, written in a daughter's handwriting, representing a family's reckoning with its own legacy of hate. And she thought about her own daughter's handwriting, about Maya's strength, about generations of women passing down either hate or hope, either fear or courage. The choice was always there. Every generation got to choose. Maya took Dorothy's hand. Nana, you changed everything today. No, baby, we all did. Every person who came forward, every witness who testified, every document Jennifer Chan risked everything to expose. That's how change happens. Not one person, all of us. Dorothy's phone rang. Jennifer Chen. Miss Washington, they fired me. Security escorted me out of the building. My access is revoked. My career is over. Jennifer, listen to me. Your old career is over. Your new career is just beginning. You're going to be okay. I promise. How can you promise that? Because you're not alone. You're never going to be alone again. As they drove away from the courthouse, Dorothy looked back at the crowd, still celebrating, still believing that justice was possible. And she touched her mother's necklace, feeling its weight, feeling the weight of history and hope, and all the battles fought and all the battles still to come. Her phone buzzed one more time, another unknown number, another text, but this time the message was different. You won today, but this isn't over, not even close. They're coming for you, all of you, and they're not going to stop until you're destroyed. Dorothy deleted the text and looked at Maya sleeping in the back seat, exhausted from 2 days of chaos. Let them come, Dorothy whispered. Let them try. 3 days after the hearing, FBI agents traced the threatening texts to an IP address in Dallas, Northern Star Airlines corporate headquarters. Someone inside the company sent those threats. Agent Morrison told Dorothy in James' living room, we're executing search warrants right now. Dorothy watched the news coverage on television. FBI agents and windbreakers swarming the airline's headquarters, carrying out boxes of computers, files, hard drives, executives being led out in handcuffs. How many arrests? James asked. So far 7. VP of HR Chief Legal Officer, 3 regional managers, and 2 people from corporate security. More coming. Maya looked up from her laptop. It's all over social media. People are calling it the biggest corporate civil rights scandal in decades. Dorothy's phone rang. Douglas Peterson. Miss Washington, I'm calling from FBI custody. They arrested me 2 hours ago. Mr. Peterson, I need you to know something. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know the extent of what was happening. My own executives were running a criminal enterprise under my nose, and I was too focused on profits to see it. Why are you calling me? Because I'm going to testify against them, all of them. I'm cooperating fully with the FBI, and I wanted you to hear it from me first. I'm resigning as CEO effective immediately. The board is conducting a complete leadership overhaul. Dorothy absorbed this. What happens to the airline? It survives. We have 45,000 employees who did nothing wrong. We have millions of passengers who deserve better. The company survives, but it survives changed. Better because of you. He hung up. Rebecca Stein arrived an hour later with news that made Dorothy's head spin. The criminal investigation expanded. They found evidence linking to 3 other major airlines. This isn't just Northern Star. This is industry-wide systematic discrimination covered up for years, with executives actively conspiring to suppress complaints and intimidate victims. How is that possible? They had a network, executives from different airlines, communicating about problem passengers, code for passengers who filed discrimination complaints. They shared names, flagged them, and systems made sure these people had terrible experiences across multiple airlines to discourage them from flying again. Dorothy felt sick. They weaponized the entire industry against people who spoke up. Yes, and we have emails proving it. Your case broke open something massive. At 3 p.m., Dorothy's doorbell rang. She opened it to find Cynthia Porter standing there alone. No lawyers, no cameras. I know you probably don't want to see me, Cynthia said quietly. Dorothy almost closed the door, but something in Cynthia's face stopped her. Something broken, humbled, raw. What do you want to apologize? Really apologize. Not the fake apology my lawyers wrote. Not the victim story I told on Fox News. A real apology from me to you. Dorothy didn't invite her in. They stood in the doorway, these 2 women who'd collided on an airplane and set off a chain reaction neither had anticipated. I was wrong, Cynthia said, and her voice cracked. Everything you said about me was true. I am racist. I've been racist my whole life, making excuses, telling myself I treat everyone the same. But I don't. I didn't. I targeted you because you're black, because you were confident, because you wouldn't just do what I said without questioning me. And that made me furious. Dorothy waited. I watched the hearing, Cynthia continued. I watched them reveal all those complaints, 17 complaints. 17 times I made someone feel the way I made you feel, and I never stopped, never changed. Just kept telling myself everyone else was too sensitive, too quick to play the race card. But it was me. It was always me. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to hear it, and because my daughter, Ashley, she won't speak to me anymore. She said she can't have a relationship with me until I actually change, not just say, I'll change, and she's right. Cynthia's eyes filled with tears. I lost my job. I lost my reputation. I'm probably going to lose my house because nobody will hire me. But you know what? I lost. That hurts most. My daughter's respect. She looks at me like I'm a stranger, like I'm someone she's ashamed to be related to. And I did that. I created that. Dorothy studied this woman, seeing something she'd seen before. The moment when someone's worldview cracked open and they had to confront what they'd been. What are you going to do about it? Dorothy asked. I don't know. I want to say I'm going to become an anti-racism activist or dedicate my life to fixing what I broke, but that sounds performative. Honestly, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to be better when I don't even know what better looks like for someone like me. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised even herself. There's a woman named Jennifer Chen. She worked for the airline. She blew the whistle and lost everything. She needs help rebuilding her career, her life. You could help her. Cynthia looked stunned. Why would you? Why would she? Because redemption isn't about words. It's about action. You want to change. Start by helping someone else whose life was destroyed by the system you were part of. She'll never accept my help. Maybe not, but offer anyway. Keep offering. Do the work, even if no one ever forgives you. That's what actual change looks like. Cynthia nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. I don't deserve your advice, but thank you. She turned to leave, then stopped. The necklace. Your mother's necklace, I understand now why you couldn't take it off. I'm sorry I tried to make you. I'm sorry I didn't see what it meant. After she left, Maya appeared beside Dorothy. Nana, did you just give life advice to the woman who assaulted you? Your great-grandmother always said, hate keeps you trapped. Forgiveness. Real forgiveness sets you free. Are you free? Dorothy touched her mother's necklace. Getting there, baby girl. Getting there. That night, the news broke. The Department of Justice announced a sweeping civil rights investigation into the airline industry. 6 major airlines were being investigated for systematic discrimination. The DOJ was reviewing tens of thousands of complaints going back 20 years. Dorothy's phone exploded with calls. Every major news outlet wanted interviews. Civil rights organizations wanted her to speak at events. Law schools wanted her to guest lecture. Publishing houses wanted her to write a book. It's too much, Dorothy told James. I'm 72 years old. I just wanted to fly to Maya's graduation. Mama, you did more than that. You changed an entire industry. But at what cost? Jennifer Chen lost her job. 78 people had to relive their trauma by testifying. Families are torn apart. Executives are going to prison. My granddaughter has FBI protection. Was it worth it? James took his mother's hands. Ask those 78 people if it was worth it. Ask the thousands who fly without being discriminated against because of what you did. Ask Maya if it was worth seeing her grandmother stand up for what's right. Maya entered the room. It was worth it, Nana. Every single second of it. 2 weeks later, Dorothy stood in front of Congress. They'd called her to testify before the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure about discrimination in the airline industry. The hearing room was packed. C-SPAN cameras broadcast live. Dorothy sat at the witness table, her mother's necklace gleaming under the harsh lights. Ms. Washington, the committee chair, began, "Thank you for being here. Can you tell us in your own words what happened on Flight 447? Dorothy had told this story dozens of times to reporters, to lawyers, to supporters. But telling it to Congress felt different. This was history being recorded. This was change being legislated. I boarded a flight wearing my mother's jewelry, Dorothy began. Jewelry she wore during the Freedom Rides of 1961. Jewelry that represents my family's history of resistance against racism. And a flight attendant demanded I remove it not because of any real safety policy, but because she saw a black woman wearing gold and made assumptions about who I was and what I deserved. She looked directly at the cameras. But this isn't just about me. This is about every passenger of color who's been targeted, profiled, humiliated. This is about Muslim women told to remove hijabs, Sikh men forced to remove turbans, Black teenagers treated like criminals for reading books, Latino families separated because someone decided they looked suspicious. This is about systematic dehumanization disguised as policy. Her voice grew stronger. And it's about corporations that knew it was happening and chose profit over people that paid millions to silence victims, that protected racist employees because it was cheaper than addressing the problem. That built an entire network to blacklist passengers who dared to speak up. Representative Johnson, a black woman from Georgia, leaned forward. Ms. Washington, what changes do you want to see federal legislation, real legislation, with teeth? Mandatory bias training isn't enough. We need independent review boards for every airline. We need to make discrimination complaints public so passengers can make informed decisions. We need criminal penalties for executives who cover up civil rights violations. And we need to ban NDAs in discrimination cases so victims can tell their stories. Some airlines claim these changes would be too expensive to implement. Dorothy smiled. A hard smile. You know what's expensive? Paying $3.2 million in hush money, defending federal criminal investigations, losing customers who no longer trust you, destroying lives and then wondering why people are angry. That's expensive. Treating people with basic dignity, that's free. The room erupted in applause. The committee chair didn't even try to stop it. After the hearing, Dorothy was mobbed by representatives, wanting photos, wanting to shake her hand, wanting to promise they'd pass legislation in her name. But one person pushed through the crowd, an elderly white woman with silver hair, probably 85. "Miss Washington, I'm Senator Martha Reynolds from Vermont. I've been in Congress for 30 years, and I've never seen testimony like that. You just changed the conversation about civil rights in this country. Thank you, Senator. I want to introduce the Dorothy Washington Civil Rights and Transportation Act, comprehensive legislation addressing everything you mentioned. Will you work with me on it?" Dorothy looked at this woman, saw genuine commitment in her eyes. "Senator, I'm tired. I'm 72. I've fought battles my whole life. I just want to rest. I understand. But Miss Washington, you're not done yet. This is the fight that matters. This is the one that changes everything for the next generation." Dorothy looked around at all the faces watching her, reporters, politicians, supporters, and she thought about Maya, about all the young people who'd been inspired by watching an old woman refuse to take off a necklace. "Okay," Dorothy said, "let's change everything." 3 months later, the Dorothy Washington Civil Rights and Transportation Act passed the House 387 to 48. 2 weeks after that, it passed the Senate 76 to 24. The president signed it into law in a Rose Garden ceremony with Dorothy standing beside him. The legislation mandated independent civil rights review boards for all transportation companies, banned NDAs in discrimination settlements, required public reporting of discrimination complaints, established federal criminal penalties for executives who covered up civil rights violations, and created a victim compensation fund for those who'd experienced discrimination. It was the most comprehensive civil rights legislation passed in 20 years. At the signing ceremony, the president handed Dorothy the pen he'd used. "This is your law," he said. "Your courage made this possible." But Dorothy was looking at the crowd behind the press pool. She saw Jennifer Chen, who'd been hired by a civil rights nonprofit as their chief investigator. She saw Marcus Johnson, who'd quit his family law practice to focus on civil rights cases. She saw David Turner, the law student now interning at the ACLU. She saw Evelyn and the Freedom Riders, some in wheelchairs now, but still there, still fighting. She saw Maya graduating from law school next year, already planning to follow her grandmother's footsteps. And she saw Ashley Porter standing beside her mother, Cynthia. They were together again, working on rebuilding their relationship, both of them volunteering at an organization that helped victims of discrimination. That evening, Dorothy returned to her Chicago apartment. She was exhausted. The last 3 months had been a whirlwind of hearings, interviews, legislation, public appearances. She'd barely slept. She'd lost weight. Her arthritis was flaring up from the stress. But she was home now. Finally, home. She made tea, sat in her favorite chair, and touched her mother's necklace. "We did it, Mama," she whispered. "We changed the law. We changed the industry. We changed something." Her phone rang a number she didn't recognize, but she was used to that now. "Miss Washington, this is Sarah Chen. I'm Jennifer Chen's mother." Dorothy sat up. "Is Jennifer okay? She's fine. Better than fine. She's thriving in her new job, but I called because I needed to tell you something. Jennifer has struggled with depression her whole life. After she lost her job, after everything fell apart, I was scared. So scared she might hurt herself. But you know what saved her? What you. Watching you stand up, watching you fight, watching you refuse to back down. It gave her hope. It showed her that doing the right thing matters, even when it costs everything. You saved my daughter's life, Miss Washington, and I needed you to know that." After they hung up, Dorothy sat in the dark apartment crying. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight of realizing how far the ripples had spread. One moment on an airplane, one refusal to remove a necklace, and it had touched thousands of lives. A key turned in the lock. James and Maya entered carrying bags of takeout. "Surprise," Maya said. We brought dinner. You didn't think we'd let you spend your first night back alone, did you?" They ate together, the 3 generations talking and laughing and finally able to breathe. Nana Maya said, "I made a decision. I'm not just going to law school. I'm going to focus on civil rights law like you like Daddy. I want to keep fighting." Dorothy looked at her granddaughter and saw her mother's fire, her own determination, and something new, a generation that wouldn't settle for incremental change. "Your great-grandmother would be so proud," Dorothy said. "She'd be proud of you, Nana. You finished what she started." "No, baby. I continued it. This fight is never finished. Each generation picks up where the last one left off. That's how progress happens." James raised his glass. To Grandma Ruth, to Mama, to Maya, to all the women who refused to back down. They clinked glasses, and Dorothy felt something settle in her chest. Not closure exactly, but completion. She'd done what she was supposed to do. She'd honored her mother's legacy. She'd protected her granddaughter's future. She'd stood up when it mattered most. A week later, Dorothy received a package. No return address. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The letter read, "Miss Washington, I'm a flight attendant for Northern Star. I went through the new civil rights training your law mandated. It changed me. I realized I've been complicit in discrimination for years, staying silent when I should have spoken up. I'm not staying silent anymore. Thank you for showing us what courage looks like." Enclosed is a photo I thought you'd want to see. The photograph showed the airlines training center. On the wall was a massive portrait of Dorothy Washington, her hand touching her mother's necklace, with a caption that read, "Dignity is not negotiable." Dorothy called Maya. "Baby girl, you need to see this." When Maya saw the photo, she started crying. "Nana, you're literally on the wall of the airline that discriminated against you. You're part of their history now. We're part of their history," Dorothy corrected. "All of us who fought. All of us who refused to be silent." 6 months after the law passed, the first annual reports came out. Discrimination complaints were up 300%, not because discrimination had increased, but because people finally felt safe reporting it. And for the first time, 85% of complaints resulted in action. Employees were being held accountable. Passengers were being protected. The system was working. Dorothy received a call from the Smithsonian. They wanted her mother's necklace for their civil rights collection to be displayed alongside artifacts from the Freedom Rides, the March on Washington, the Selma, to Montgomery marches. It's the symbol of modern civil rights resistance. The curator said future generations need to see it to understand that the fight continues, that every generation has to stand up. Dorothy sat in her apartment holding the necklace, feeling its weight. This piece of gold that had survived beatings and arrests and 60 years of fighting. This piece of her mother that had protected her, guided her, given her strength when she had none left. But it wasn't hers alone. It never had been. It belonged to history, to the future, to every person who'd ever stood up against injustice and paid the price. "When?" Dorothy asked. "Whenever you're ready." Dorothy looked at Maya. "What do you think?" Baby girl Maya touched the necklace gently. "I think Mama Ruth would want everyone to see it. I think she'd want it to inspire people the way it inspired you, the way it inspired me. But it's our families. No, Nana. It's everyone's now. That's what you taught me. That resistance isn't just personal. It's collective. And when we share our stories, when we share our strength, we make everyone stronger." Dorothy called the curator back. "You can have it, but on 3 conditions. First, it's displayed with the full story. My mother's story, my story, and the story of everyone who fought for this law. Second, there's a plaque explaining that dignity is not negotiable at any age for any reason. Third, every year on the anniversary of the law passing, someone reads my mother's name out loud. Ruth Washington. So she's never forgotten. Done. All of it. Thank you, Miss Washington." The day Dorothy donated the necklace to the Smithsonian, hundreds of people attended the ceremony. Civil rights leaders, politicians, airline executives, and regular people who'd been inspired by her story. As Dorothy placed the necklace in the display case, she felt her mother's presence stronger than ever, Not in the gold, not in the locket, but in the legacy, in the lives changed, in the law passed in the future, protected. I kept my promise, Mama, Dorothy whispered. I never took it off unless I absolutely had to, and I only took it off now because it's time for it to belong to everyone. She stepped back from the case and Maya took her hand. Are you sad, Nana? No, baby, I'm free. Because Dorothy Mae Washington understood something profound. The necklace had never been about the gold. It had been about what the gold represented: resistance, dignity, refusal to be diminished. And those things didn't live in a piece of jewelry. They lived in people. In every person who stood up, in every person who said no, in every person who demanded to be treated with the respect they deserved. The necklace would hang in a museum protected behind glass, teaching future generations about courage. But the real legacy that lived in Maya, who'd go on to argue before the Supreme Court 3 times, that lived in Jennifer Chen, who'd become one of the most respected civil rights investigators in the country. That lived in David Turner, who'd found the Southern Poverty Law C Center's Discrimination Prevention Program. That lived in thousands of flight attendants who went through training and emerged changed better, more aware. That lived in every passenger who flew without fear, who wore their cultural dress with pride, who knew they were protected by a law named after a woman who refused to take off her mother's necklace. Dorothy Mae Washington returned to her Chicago apartment that night. She was 73 now. She'd spent the last year transforming the airline industry, passing federal legislation, and inspiring a generation. And she was done. Not done fighting. She'd never be done fighting, but done with this particular battle. This war had been won. Other battles waited, but other people would fight them. Her job was complete. She sat in her chair drinking tea, looking at her bare neck where the necklace had hung for 15 years. And she didn't feel empty. She felt light, free, ready. Maya called. Nana turned on the news. Dorothy turned it on. The anchor was reporting that airline discrimination complaints had dropped 60% in just 6 months, that the Dorothy Washington Act had fundamentally changed how transportation companies operated. That early data suggested similar legislation would be introduced for hotels, restaurants, and retail businesses. You started a revolution, Nana Maya said on the phone. No, baby. I continued one. Your great-grandmother started it. I kept it going. And now you'll take it forward. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. 1 year to the day after Dorothy refused to remove her mother's necklace, the Smithsonian held a special ceremony. They unveiled the completed exhibit, the Dorothy Washington Collection, Modern Civil Rights Resistance. Dorothy attended surrounded by her family, her fellow fighters, and thousands of people whose lives had been touched by her story. The curator stood beside the display case holding the necklace. This necklace traveled from the Freedom Rides of 1961 to a flight in 2025. It survived beatings, arrests, and attempts to silence the women who wore it. And it became the symbol of a movement that reminded America that the fight for civil rights is never over, that every generation must stand up, that dignity is not negotiable. He paused. Ruth Washington wore this necklace in the fight for basic human rights. Dorothy Washington wore it in the fight for equal treatment and dignity. And now it hangs here, waiting to inspire the next generation of fighters, the next people who will refuse to back down, the next people who will change the world. The crowd applauded, and Dorothy stood accepting the recognition, feeling the weight of everything she'd accomplished. But more than that feeling, the lightness of knowing she'd done what she was supposed to do. She'd stood up. She'd spoken out. She'd refused to be diminished, and she'd changed everything. Years later, when law students studied civil rights, they'd learn about Dorothy Washington. When airline employees went through training, they'd watch videos of her testimony. When young people felt powerless against systems designed to keep them small, they'd hear her story and find courage. And somewhere, somehow, Ruth Washington was smiling. because her daughter had taken the strength passed down through generations of women and used it to break open a system to change an industry to prove that one person standing up could start a revolution. Dorothy Mae Washington. 73 years old, retired civil rights attorney, went home to Chicago and lived the rest of her life knowing that dignity is not negotiable, that resistance is not futile, and that sometimes refusing to take off a necklace is the most revolutionary act of all. Because it's not about the jewelry, it's about refusing to let anyone make you less than you are. And that refusal, that simple word no, can change the